James. Thanks so much for tuning in and joining me for the continuation of this video series where I'm walking through all the Kipper decks in my collection. So this series was the request of one of my viewers who asked me if I would be willing to showcase all the decks in my collection that are Kipper related. So in the previous installments, I've shared 3 decks, so this is going to be deck number 4, and I will start out by saying that this deck is one of my personal favorites. You have seen it. If you've watched any of the videos on my channel that are Kipper related, you have seen it before, so this should come as no surprise because I believe I've said that in those videos about this deck being my favorite. And so this is the Roaring 20s Kipper. It is by Lynn Boyle, and I will be leaving information about the deck in the description box below, as well as the previous installments of the series if you just happen to be catching this installment first, or you can visit the playlist on my channel page. And so I almost realized that I didn't address my attire. So I am filming this video on Christmas Day. So for those of you who are celebrating the holiday, I hope you are having a great one, or if you're catching this after the fact, I hope that your Christmas was a great one despite of all the things that are going on in the collective, right? So I hope it was a great holiday. And I didn't mention that in the previous installment because I gotta shoot these videos when I can. And so with my schedule being what it is, actually a day off or a holiday is a great day because I'm not working. So that is the reason for my attire. I am filming this on Christmas Day. So now that I've gotten that out of the way, let's get to the table and take a closer look at one of my favorite Kipper decks, the Roaring 20s Kipper. And here we are with the deck on the table. And when I received the deck, it came shrink wrapped in plastic. So it didn't come in a tuck box, and it didn't come in a bag or anything like that. So I store mine in a velvet bag that I bought separately. And you'll note that the first card here is the title card to the deck. And it notes that this Kipper deck follows the 1920s published directions and visual cues. And you may remember that I talked about the 1890s directions in the previous installment of this series. So I have one deck by this creator with the 1890s directions, and then I wanted the 1920s directions for this deck, and there was a method to my madness. Because it's called the Roaring 20s Kipper, I wanted it to follow the 1920s directions. Okay, so that is the title card. And as I turn it over, these are the card backs. So it says the Roaring 20s Kipper, the creator's name, and the copyright date for the publication of the deck. So here we are with the first card. And so, like I've done in previous videos, I won't offer a lot of commentary unless I feel it is important. So here we have the first card, the man. The woman. And I love the image. It gives off a very silent film, silent movie kind of feel. And then what I will note here is that with the third card in the deck, this is marriage. In this deck, she calls it partnership. And the reason why I'm pointing this out is because there are 3 variations of this card, which is why I wanted the deck. So here we have partnership with a man and a woman. Next we have partnership with 2 men. And then finally we have partnership once again with 2 women. So my personal favorite out of the 3 versions is the one with 2 men. So I use that one all the time. And when it turns up in a reading, it doesn't necessarily signify a gay relationship. But I just personally use that one out of the 3 because it's the one I like the most. Alright, so those were the partnership cards. Next we have get together, which in traditional Kipper cartomancy is known as meetings. Then we have older man, which is known as good lord or good gentleman. And then we have older woman. And note, here we don't have the challenge that I was talking about in previous videos of turning the older man back over. So here we have the possibility of the older man and the older woman being able to face each other in a reading. Next we have good news, also known as pleasant letter. False person. And what I like about the visual, it honors the tradition where what's behind false person is what's being hidden. And then you want to see what the effect of that is with the card in front of it. So if you had 3 cards in a line, the card behind this card would be what is being hidden by false person, what's being hidden or concealed, and then what's in front of it is the effect of that concealment. So I like that. And then the visual itself gives off the idea of something being veiled, something that you can't entirely see. Those kinds of things. So that is false person. Next we have change. And then of course change is you want to follow the vehicle on the card and see where the change is taking place or the direction that the change is moving into. Next we have the journey card. So there are 2 versions of this card in this deck. So the first one is a train going across train tracks. And then the second is a plane flying in the air. And of course it's a plane keeping with the era of the deck's theme. So I used the first one. If you've seen me work with this deck in previous videos, you'll note that I like the one with the train. Next we have abundance, which is known as winning lots of money. Next we have younger woman. This is known as rich girl. And then we have younger man. And again, there is a possibility here of these 2 younger people being able to face each other in a reading if they showed up in the same line of cards. So again, I like that. Next we have sad news. And sad news is a cause and effect card. So it honors the tradition where what's behind sad news, if you go with the idea that the visual cue is the direction she's looking this way, so the card that's behind sad news would be the cause of the sad news, and then the card in front of it, going with line of sight of the character in the card, would be the effect of that sad news. Next we have success in love. And here we have thoughts, which is traditionally known as his thoughts. But I love this image. So the visual, because I give myself permission to read Kipper a little more visually than I do Lenormand, of course. And so with that, I love the fact that she's sitting with a book open, and she's sitting in a library. So for me, this card can be my reading card in the deck. So when I pull it, usually can represent scheduling a meeting, because one of the meanings of this card is planning. And so this could be like a client or a customer reaches out and we schedule a meeting, or that it just so happens on that day that I pull the card, I'm actually doing a reading. And the reading is a pun for the fact that she's reading in a library, you know, for being a reader. So this is my personal meaning for this card. So that is thoughts. Next we have a gift. And so this card has a visual cue, and it is that you want to pay attention. If you have cards above it and below it, you want to pay attention to the card that's below this card, because that would tell you about the gift itself. So that's a gift. Next we have little child. And then we have ending in loss. This is also known, I should say, as bereavement or fatality. Next we have house. Living room. Official person, which is also known as military person. And once again, I like the image. And we have courthouse. Then we have theft. And so now theft is a cause and effect card, and so the way I read it is I pay attention to where the figure on the card is escaping. So I tend to look at the card on this side as what is being taken away by the thief. And then because of the money bags being on this side, I look to see where that theft is going, or what's it's being given to. So for me, one of the meanings that I have for the theft card, if it's not talking about an actual theft or loss of some kind, it's about like what's the takeaway. So you want to pay attention to the cards that are on each side. This is what's being taken away. This is where that theft, quote unquote, is being given to. So that's theft. Next is high honors. And I love the visual. Then we have Great Happiness, which is the best card in the deck. So this is also known as Big Luck, or Fortune or Fortuna. For me, as a tarot reader, I look at the glass, and I think of the Ace of Cups, with the idea that, you know, your cup runneth over. But again, this is the best card in the deck. Next we have Unexpected Reward. And then we have Expectation. This is another cause and effect card, since expectation talks about waiting for something to arrive, or your needs, your wants, your desires. You want to pay attention to the card that's behind it, because that'll tell you the cause of the waiting, or the cause of the expectation or the anticipation. And then the effect of it would be line of sight, what card is this woman facing. And I love that the visual makes note of the timing factor of this card. Next we have prison and restriction. And I've talked about this in previous videos that I love the fact that the prison card is a building, because that is one of the meanings of this card. Most people go with the idea that the prison can represent limitation and restriction and confinement, and it does indicate those things. That is true. But it can also represent a building. So that is prison and restriction. Next we have advisor, which is also known as court person. So this follows the tradition of two people being on the card because the advisor is a connector card. So you want to pay attention to the cards on either side of the advisor card. So that is advisor. Next we have short rest, which is also known as short illness. And this is another connector card because there's two figures on the card. Next we have stress and fear, which is also known as grief and adversity. So again, I like the figure of the woman because it looks straight out of a silent movie. But what I also like is I like the lightning bolt that's in the image. So for me, this card can indicate storms, something having to do with electricity, but also brainstorming because the lightning bolt is over her head. So the idea of brainstorming, which means we're trying to come up with ideas. So that is stress and fear. Next we have gloom and doubt. And so this is one of two images, or two cards I should say, for this particular one. So I like this one. So I will already share that this is the one I use because I like the Charlie Chaplin vibe there. And plus I wanted to balance out the energy of the deck in terms of masculine energy or males being represented and women being represented. A lot of the images have women on the cards. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but just to give it a little balance. So this is the one I use. And then the second one has a woman. And so now gloom and doubt, remember, is the most challenging card in the deck. It's also known as gloomy thoughts or murky thoughts. Next up we have the work and occupation card. Pretty straightforward there. Then we have a long way. And what I usually do is in a larger spread, I will pay attention to the card on this side because the path or the way leads, once you move beyond the trees, leads in that direction. And then if I was doing a tableau, I would pay attention to the card beneath it because the other direction that the road leads into. So that is a long way. And then the last card is Yearning and Abroad, which is also known as Hope Big Water. And that is the Roaring 20s Kipper. And so, as I've said many times, if you've seen me work with this deck, this is my favorite Kipper deck, or I should say one of them. There is another one I will be showing down the line. But this, up to this point, when I got this deck, this became my favorite out of the ones that I have shown you up to this point. So again, that is the Roaring 20s Kipper. I will be leaving information about it in the description box below should you fancy it and you want to learn more about it or even acquire it and add it to your collection. Thank you so much for sharing this space with me as I walk through my Kipper card collection, and so stay tuned for the next installment. where I share one other deck that's in my collection. So until then, take care and have a wonderful day.